Man, y'all got real good at that. Y'all good. All right, everybody, please have a seat. Well, welcome. Hi, family panel. This is PYA. So, we will not waste a lot of your time because we have a lot to discuss tonight. So we will jump straight into introductions. And if you haven't been to a panel, this is how it works. As they're talking, as we're talking, you get to text in any question you want to 409-444-3522. It's 409-444-3522. And through the magic of technology, that anonymously is going to go to a computer in the back where they will type in said question, and through the magic of Wi-Fi will end up on my computer up here. And I will get to ask the panel your question. So feel free to start texting those questions in now as we interrupt Pastor Scott while he pours his water. So we'll let you go first. Introductions.
My name is Amber Hawk, and this is my husband, Scott.
Hello.
Yahoo! Pastor Scott. Pastor Scott.
My name is Scott. This is my wife, Amber.
My 6-year-old Pastor Scott.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so quick story on us. I get to serve at the church. My wife's a school teacher, Amber, and she has a voice of her own, but I'm going to speak on this about us generally. We have 7 children, ranging from 8 years old to 20 years old, and I am 32, Amber's 31, and we have a granddaughter. Her name is Cadence, and she's 2, and she's a joy of ours. We have adopted all 7 of our children, and we adopted them through the Texas foster care system, and that is obviously why we're on the panel, a family panel.
Yeah. Would you care to add anything? That was good for now. We'll get her to talk, don't worry. I'm Tosh. If you're new here, it's just Tosh. It's not short for anything. Other than Tosh and Tammy. Tammy was going to be on the panel tonight, and some family things came up. She couldn't make it, so I get to talk for both of us. Normally, I just moderate, but tonight I get to participate in the conversation. Quick history, you may not know, I have a wife we just celebrated our 17th anniversary last Saturday. We dated for 5 years, so we've been together 22 years. We have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old who we just got June 10th, 5 years ago. So Sunday a week ago, we got our 2 kids, also through the Texas State foster care system. It's a wonderful story. It's an amazing journey. Because we have time, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Tammy and I always knew we wanted to be parents, and we were already parents, just not in the eyes of the state. We had many children, but we didn't get to claim them as tax deductions. Some of you are some of those kids, and I always knew... I felt like God told me I was going to have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and I was going to get the boy first, right? Very strong in my heart, and several friends have prayed that over me over the years. And Tammy and I did lots of things to try and have kids on our own, only to find out that it was a medical impossibility. We were never going to have children. A perfect storm of infertility happened 17 years ago, and when a doctor looks at you and says, you might as well adopt because you're never having kids, and you tell them, but God promised me children, they kind of look at you like you're crazy. They do. Dr. Schnell looked at me like I was crazy. Of course I am. But, so we were at camp one year. Tammy and I were still doing youth at the time, and we went through 3 rounds of in vitro, which is terrible on the mama. Anyway, and after a couple miscarriages, Tammy said, I'm done. I'm finished. And I was crushed, right? Because I just knew God had promised me 2 kids and that I was going to have a boy and a girl, and the boy was coming first. Just knew it. And I wasn't open to the idea of adoption. I wasn't opposed to adoption. Adoption was a beautiful thing, but that's not what God promised me, right? And so, flash forward to camp. We were at camp, and it was a worship set, and I was boo-hooing like a baby because we had just miscarried and just had this conversation, and then we got to take 100 snot-nosed kids to camp, right? And I'm sitting there in worship, and it hit me all of a sudden. I felt like God spoke to me and said, "Why are you putting me in a box?" I'm not putting you in a box. I promised you 2 kids. I'll do my part, you do yours. So fast forward another year and a half, and maybe a little longer. CPS showed up on our front door with 2 kids. A boy and a girl. The 6-year-old is a girl. The 5-year-old is a boy. Well, they were 7 months and 19 months at the time. And I was like, well, God, you gave me a boy and a girl, but you got it wrong. Neener, right? That's what I was telling God as I'm headed out to get the kids. And last joke's on God, because who's the first one out of the car but the boy? And God said, neener. Got you. So that's our almost 12-year struggle in 2 minutes. That's not to say we haven't enjoyed, long before we had Kira and Tristan, parenthood. Because like I said, some of you are my favorite people in the world. Yeah! But that's why we're here today, is because we struggled, we fought, we kicked, we screamed, only to find out that there's more to it than just deciding to have kids. There's way more to it.
My name is Laura. This is my husband, Brian. We have been married for 14 years. Woo-hoo! We met in high school. I'm older. We have 4 biological children. Once we started having kids 2 at a time, we were like, we're done. The last were twins, and they weren't planned, and we were like, that's it. We can't, no. But God, surprise. So right now they are 12, 8, and 5, and 5. 5 and 5. And a couple years ago, God really started working on my heart, and he said, you're not done. And I argued with him for a long time. And almost 2 years now, we've been foster parents. So we've had more than 1 child placed with us, and we currently have a 6-month-old with us to throw into that mix.
Hi, I'm Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, guys. Yeah. So, not much to follow up. Born and raised in this area. Graduated from Harvard on the NHS, LU.
Peckham.
That's it.
Peckham. Isn't that what we do now?
No.
Peckham.
No, that didn't exist when I went to school there. No. I refuse to believe. Anyways, yeah, Laura pursued me heavily through the end of high school.
Not so much.
We have different stories.
Very.
Anyways, yeah. So Laura said God was working on us with children, working on her, and then she worked on me, and then I decided to listen to God afterwards. So there's the honesty of that scenario. Yeah, family has not turned out the way I expected it to, but it's better than I've ever expected it could be. 12 years, 2 kids. We were popping out kids faster than I thought we should. And
you know that happens, right?
Yeah. No. I gotta stop. This is being recorded.
This is on YouTube.
So, anyways, carry on, folks.
Carry on, my wayward
Next
son.
person.
Yeah. So Tammy is 2 years older than me, and we have way different stories too. I drug her down into the pit. No. That's a joke. So let's get started. Before we jump into the questions, is there anything either of the four of you would like to just start with to say about family? Anything. Open question, open forum. Anything you'd like to throw out there?
I'll just add to our introduction since they went a little bit more detailed. Scott and I will celebrate 10 years of marriage next week. And we started looking at starting a family after we'd been married about 5 years, and we too struggled with infertility, something that I struggled with personally for a while. We too used Dr. Schnell and went through the beginning stages of some fertility treatments, but it is very taxing. It's not something talked about a whole lot. It's more talked about now. Social media has opened up doors for a lot of things, but it's very taxing, very hard, emotionally, physically, and anyway, Dr. Schnell came in after our first round of treatments and said, I don't know why you're not pregnant. And Scott looked at me and said, well, I do then. And so then that was it for us. We just felt like the Lord was closing that door for us. And we just kind of sat back for about 6 months and just processed, like the Lord was shutting this door. Where do we go from here? And God started breaking my heart about abortion. And I don't know. It was just like I was seeing it everywhere, and I didn't know how I could affect such a huge thing, a huge problem, and I felt kind of helpless, and here I was struggling in my infertility and not being able to start a family, but then, murder basically was rampant across the world, and so I was really heartbroken, and then God started connecting the dots and showing me that adoption was basically an answer to not just being, as we said before when we were talking, pro-life or pro-birth, but actually being pro-life. And so we went to our first foster care meeting and then thought we would just do foster care. And then the Lord has changed our story as we've gone. As we said, now we have 7 children. 6 of them were through the foster care system, and our oldest actually was never in foster care. She was the sibling of one of our sibling groups. So we can explore that a little bit more, but family changed, my perception of what I thought things were, and God was in it, from the beginning. I thought infertility was a struggle that I was going to just be plagued with, and actually it's now something I'm thankful for, and that was God. He was in it all the way from the beginning.
He works all things out together for good for those who love him. All right. Questions are pouring in. We'll jump right in. First question that came in is directed to the two of you, Pastor Scott and Amber. What was the moment when you realized that God was telling you to adopt? It kind of plays on the story you were just telling.
Well, we were doing foster care, and the Texas State foster care system is a lot of fun, and
Not.
a lot of fun. Sorry, I forgot that important word.
Sarcasm.
Not a lot of fun. And we had had a placement of 2 kiddos into our home. The way it works is you do a lot of paperwork. They call it like a paperwork pregnancy. It takes about 9 months for you to get approved to be a foster parent. Well, then just randomly one day you get a phone call, and they say, hey, we have some kids. Do you want them? And then it's kind of weird, but you can actually say no or yes, or let me look at their pictures, and then decide no or yes, or find more out about them, and you can learn the history, or a little bit what's going on, or the number of kids. You could just say no. And so we found out about the kiddos. We said yes. We got our first 2. Well, then we got a call for 3 more, and I said no, and Amber said maybe. So we went down and looked at the pictures, and that sold us. So we said, yeah, we'll take 3 of those. And so we took 3 more home. And then it's really how it works. It's kind of odd, but true. And so the cool thing is the foster care system's goal is to get these children back with their families in a safe place, though. So maybe if the mom is the offending parent, maybe go home with the dad, or if mom and dad are both in trouble, then they go home with an aunt or uncle, grandparent, whatever it might be. But when all of those things come to no end, and there's no safe place within their family to go, then they start looking outside of the biological family for an adoptive placement. Well, the first 2 kiddos we had went back home with dad, and it's a great story. We still get to know them today and keep up with them, and it's a wonderful redemptive story. And the second sibling set, or the 3, are Braylon, Elin, and Shay. They were supposed to go live with an aunt. Well, they went and kind of did a pre-placement visit. They were in our care, but they went and stayed for the weekend with their aunt. And their aunt called when they got back home and called Amber and spoke with Amber.
She called her, well, there's a lot of people you have to go through. She called her CASA worker, so I don't know if you've heard of CASA, but it's somebody who is advocating on behalf of the child. So we didn't have direct relationship with that biological family at that time, but she did contact back and say, basically, the kids need to be with you. And the CASA worker knew that we were open to adoption, but again, the goal of foster care is family reunification. So foster care is different than just adopting. There's different goals, right? So the goal of foster care is to get them back with their family, but because the aunt knew, basically just in a week could see the attachment that the children already had with us, and the CASA worker knew that we were open to adoption, God worked it out.
And so when we got that phone call, that's when we knew, because they basically posed the question, will you adopt Braylon, Elin, and Shay? And kind of hung up the phone. We talked about it. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. And that's when we knew that we were going to have we would be their forever home, as we like to call it.
The biological family really wanted connection still with them, and so thinking about family, our kids have several sets of grandparents. They have Scott's parents and my parents, and they have biological grandparents that they still get to have relationship with. They have our siblings as aunts and uncles, and they still have biological aunts and uncles that they still have relationship with. That's not something mandated by the state. That's something that we've chosen, and it's a beautiful thing the way God has worked it out. So yeah, we knew at that moment that they were going to be ours forever. We just waited to see how it was going to play out exactly. But through the court system, it did work out. Actually, their biological family came to testify on our behalf for the adoption, and God has really been in it from the beginning.
Awesome. When they say the foster care paperwork is 9 months, that's fast. That's fast. And they delve into every aspect of your past. There ain't no secrets. They even ask your friends. So
and
it's
your mama and your daddy.
And your mom, yeah. There ain't no hiding.
And your kids.
And yes.
And
We
they
did
tell
interview our
everything.
kids.
Yeah.
And they ask lots of personal questions, like everything.
Everything.
Right? Like
Everything.
Like, pick something.
Mm-hmm. It's like God's CPS. Like, he knows they ask. It's pretty much how it goes. So, speaking of everything, could y'all take a minute and address your vision of family versus the reality of what your family is today?
So, our vision of family, well, my vision of family, I'll leave Laura out of this one. Laura, early on when we were dating, maybe engaged, said something to me about, hey, if we get married and do this, maybe we could adopt someday. I said, oh, sure, sweetheart. Went on about my life. So at some point, Laura had that in her well before it was even a thought in my head. So my idea of family pre this crazy life so far was children that look halfway between my spouse and me.
Luckily, they look like her.
So my answer time, Tosh. Yeah, you grow up. I grew up in what you consider a nuclear family: mom, dad, 3 boys. I had the same expectations growing up. Laura grew up with mom, dad, 4 kids, 3 girls, 1 boy. She had that general expectation, I think, where we were going to have 3 or 4 kids, a mom and a dad. I never expected, and this is just reality, I think if any of you think of what your kids will look like from today, they'll probably have the same color skin as you have right now. That's normal. We have not yet had a child that looks like us through the foster care system. And that's awesome, because my idea of family has been turned on its head because of our want for more kids and Laura's refusal to let me continue the way we did before.
I think even though we grew
More
up,
biological children.
even though we grew up in church and even though we had Christian families, we played it safe. We did what this little box that we were in, and if we could we get married, we have a job, we have a kid, and we really didn't expand on, sure we said, what does God want me to do? But we really didn't expand on that. We really didn't think, where am I going to step outside the box? In what moment am I going to say, I'm going to quit playing it safe and make a choice to quit playing it safe? Yeah. It was kind of more of, and I never really said this out loud, but my thought process was, if God wants me to do it, the skies are going to part and the angels are going to sing down a message to me and tell me exactly what to do. And so we lived life like that for a long time and just stayed doing what we thought was okay. And we never really stepped out of that to say, God, where do you want us? And choosing to do a hard thing, because that's what the gospel is about. Not just doing a hard thing because we were forced to do a hard thing or we fell into a hard thing, but choosing to do a hard thing because we want to be Jesus. And we're broken and other people are broken, but we can all work together through Jesus just to bring healing and to bring hope. It was just, we were blind to that for a long time, just choosing to be safe and choosing to be easy.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Tasha.
You're fine.
I'll be quiet. Simply being a follower of Jesus and waiting for him to direct you is, I don't think how it should work. I think because we are able to do the things he has shown us that we can do, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Helping the least of these. I used to think of that as the homeless guy on the corner, right? Right. It's not. It can be. It's not all it is. Yeah. It's the 5-week-old that's having withdrawals from drugs, right? Yeah. That needs you to stay up with them all night. You know?
Mm-hmm. That I have to stay.
This is right. I'm sorry. I assist.
I'll say, whenever we went to our first meeting for finding out information about foster care, we came out of the meeting. In the meeting, they expressed the extreme need for foster parents. And since that first meeting, Scott has done the research and pulled the numbers, and there is just a huge need, and it's unseen, and it's not talked about. But in that meeting, when we came out, we were both emotional just because we were not expecting. We went there to find out, how do we adopt? And then when we came out, Scott said, I think, basically he posed the question to me, do we think that God is asking us to complete our family or to follow him? And when he asked that, it just shook me. And we knew right then that we were changing to just doing foster care. It wasn't an end goal of adoption and completing our family in mind, but it was doing whatever God wanted us to do. And in that moment, that need was foster care. And we had 2 open bedrooms and an empty house, and wanted to fill it with children. It just took 9 months to get there.
Yeah, I dare not speak for the entire foster care system, but y'all can comment on this. We went to years of training, met lots of foster parents, okay? And some of them were amazing people, and some of them were iffy, but they all had one thing in common, or a couple things in common. Nobody I ever talked to woke up one day and said, I want to pursue being a foster parent. Like nobody ever woke up and went, hey, let's be a foster dad, foster mom. What happened, just what they're saying, they said, I want a family. I want to expand my family, grow my family. I want to have kids. And they fell in love with the tens of thousands of children that are out there waiting for somebody to care, for somebody to love them, for somebody to wake up and go, you know what? You got a raw deal in life. Let me help you. And it's the same cause I see in a lot of you today. Now, you're 18 to 25, but a lot of you are waiting for somebody to go, I see you. And that's all these people have done. That's all anybody in foster care does is, I see you. I can't fix it, but I can come alongside you, and I can pour my life into you, and I can say, let's go do this together.
I should have told y'all to put tissues up here because I'm probably going to get emotional. But the first sibling set that we had in foster care, as Scott talked about earlier, my world just broke when we were sitting on the couch one night, and she was missing her mom and dad. She knew the situation wasn't good, but that was still her mom and dad, and she was missing them. And I was comforting her, and she looked up at me, and she said, I didn't ask to be in foster care. And I just broke. You know, that was it for me. She didn't ask for the situation, but she was so hurting and just needed somebody to show her love and to come alongside her and to meet her basic needs in that moment.
Yeah, I was telling Pastor Scott Sunday, when we got our baby girl, she was 19 months. And the second day we had her, Tammy went to pick up a bowl like off the table here. And Button was standing right here. She's 19 months old. Tammy picked up the bowl and just did that, picked it up over her head. And she covered her head, dropped to the ground, and held her breath till she passed out. Because at 19 months, she had already learned to hold her breath, to avoid terror, to pass out, to avoid being beaten at 19 months. Now, these are amazing and terrifying and horrible stories. But I want you to see a correlation through our discussion. I looked it up earlier. Matthew 18:5, Jesus is talking and he says, you can't inherit the kingdom of God unless you become like a child. But at the end of 18:5, he says specifically this. He says, and whosoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. What I want to convey to you today is you don't have to wait to be married to be a mother or father figure to somebody who needs, who's hurt, who's longing, who is just reaching out, acting out, who needs something in the world. We see it every Sunday. Every Sunday we see kids walk in that door who just need something. Every Sunday.
So, kind of thinking about Brian and Laura and talking about, playing it safe and doing the normal Christian thing. I think we have to be really careful that we don't misconstrue what Christianity is. Because what we think of Christianity is living a life that is safe and comfortable. But I think probably one of the guarantees in life that you're in the place that you're supposed to be walking with Christ is that you live in a world that is uncomfortable to you. If all that you have around you is comfort, I'm telling you, you're not where God wants you to be. Mm-hmm. There's no way in the world, because this world is not our home. So we cannot find places of comfort all around us. We have to have hard things, and we have to have hard people placed in our life on purpose. We have to seek out things like that to ever experience what Christ wants us to experience in life. Because if you just think about the way that Christ chose to live, he never, ever, ever followed people that were friendly and fun with him. He went after Pharisees who were after him, and then he went after people who were sinners and who were ugly and disgusting to the religious world around them. Those are the people that he ate with and hung out with and sat with. That was uncomfortable. It was weird. It was awkward to have dinner with a prostitute. It was really strange to hang out with tax collectors who were really like the scumbags of the earth. But that's who Jesus frequented himself with. And so for us to think about the life of being a follower of Christ, to say, being a life of comfort really just shows all of us, and I'm in the same boat, is to say, I have no idea really what it means to follow Christ. I mean, there are 40-plus Bible verses that specifically talk about caring for orphans. Caring for orphans. I can't ignore 40-plus verses in the Bible and call myself a follower of Christ. Or if I can, I'm not doing what it is that God's called me to do fully. And so then begin to think, so it's like you hear all these people, well, I can't be a foster parent, or I can't adopt, I'm 18 or I'm 20 or whatever. It's not, God doesn't call us to foster, God doesn't call us to adopt, God calls us to care for orphans. And so everybody can have a role in that. It doesn't matter. It's like, well, I'm not going to be a foster parent. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to be a foster parent. Nobody's telling you to foster. But what the idea is that family looks different than what we thought. And family's going to look different for you than what you thought it's going to be. It's going to be your biological children and your spouse one day. Absolutely, yes. Maybe. I don't know. We thought it was, and it's not ours at all. But it's also going to be some 12-year-old kid at the Boys and Girls Club, or because you're a school teacher and, you realize that the 7-year-old kid goes home and doesn't have anything to eat on the weekends, and so all of a sudden you adopt that child into your family by packing his backpack full of food items to go home and eat with, and you don't ask questions about what's wrong with his parents and why aren't they providing for him, and they're probably just, drug addicts, and they're going to take this food and they're going to sell it on the... You don't think about that stuff because you see a need and you meet a need. And you see a child that's hurting, and you say, this child, if I'm supposed to put on my Jesus goggles and look at this child and say, this kid is Jesus, and I'm about to love him like Jesus. And that ultimately is what family becomes, is just, who are you? Do you need help? And how can I love you? And that becomes family for us. And that's been the coolest thing for me I'm 32. We have a 20-year-old. I'm 12 years older than my oldest daughter. And it's weird. It is. It's very strange. But she's a single mom with a 2-year-old daughter who had no way in life and no hope in life. And God said, that's your daughter. You're going to love her. Like,
that's awesome.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Let's go. That's awesome. Yeah. We've got a couple questions. You started to touch on it. Y'all continued on it. We have a couple questions about placements of children who don't look like you, special needs, etc. For those of you who don't know, in the foster care system and in straight adoption, you can specify check boxes. I want a Caucasian child. I want an African American child. I want a Hispanic child. I don't know any people personally who limited the placement. Are y'all familiar with that?
We limited when we first started out because we were terrified. We said we wanted kids that were younger than our biological kids. That's just what we were comfortable with at the time.
Yeah.
We were only willing to put our toe in it far enough to keep the natural order of our family in order still. So that's where we started.
That's where we started. Yeah. And we also felt like because our children were young, we felt like we could not provide care for a child that had some really extreme medical needs. Sure. We felt like that we already had 4 children, and we felt like we would not be able to give a child that needed a lot of medical needs and ongoing medical needs. We wanted to make sure that that child had what they needed and had the time and attention they needed. So those are really the only stipulations, and those are not cemented in. We can change that at any time.
There's a lot of wisdom in both of those, considering your other 4 children.
We also, with our first placements, specified that we didn't want children with special needs because we had never been parents before. We, too, were in ministry and youth ministry, and so we felt like we were parents. We had kids there all the time, but they went home, and I wasn't responsible for feeding them and meeting all of their needs. And so we said for that first placements, we did not feel like we could handle that, or that it would be very wise to originally. But our first placement, the little boy did have some medical needs, but they were minor.
Yeah, and if you go into it, and I felt guilty kind of saying, okay, what if there's a 3.5?
It's like a checkbox.
It is. It's
so
checkbox.
It's a sheet, and you just check off what kind of kid you want.
The more check boxes you leave empty, the more opportunity potentially is missed on a kid that may need you, right? But on the other hand, don't feel horribly guilty about it. You're already opening yourself up to potentially thousands of kids just by checking a few boxes.
We actually got a call for our first placement before we even knew we were licensed. They were like, well, you are. It says here you have your license. We were like, okay, I guess.
CPS was jumping the gun because the need is that big. The agency we go through, which is a buffer between us and CPS, and we're very happy that we have a buffer. Ultimately, CPS rules the roost, right? Our agency is just an advocate for us because there's nobody advocating for you in the process. Everybody's looking at putting the child back with their family, if it's safe to do, or CASA is court-appointed special advocate for the kid, right?
Right.
Nobody's in this for you, right? And so you're jumping in with very, very little, actually no safety net when it comes down to it. You're giving up all your privacy for the potential of getting something that's damaged.
Remember all the questions.
All the questions. But ultimately, we get a call and they tell you gender, age. I never got any pictures.
Yeah.
We never saw any pictures beforehand.
Gender, age, and ethnic background, and that's it. And we had to say no to 2 because of
there was one child we did say no to. We felt so guilty, but we did say no. We initially said yes, but then they called back, and that child had some medical needs that we just felt like our family would not be able to handle. And there was another child we said yes to, but things happened, and that child ended up not coming to us, not because of our choice, but because of other things.
And it's an emotional roller coaster every time.
Yes, because usually we only had like 2 hours.
Right, you're going from I'm having a baby in 2 hours.
Yeah.
To never mind, labor pains are gone.
Yeah. Yeah. We Tammy and I we tried to limit the age to under 5 because we wanted to. We knew we were adopting, so we wanted to place as young as we could. And we said yes to, I think, 7 placements that never showed up. Because what happens is you say yes, CPS puts your name in the hat, and a supervisor decides where that placement is going to go. But I want you to, and while it was an emotional roller coaster, what I want y'all to see is that we already said it, God works everything out, right? So while you checked a box or didn't check a box, He knows what He's doing. And He brought the exact right kids to us for us in the time He was ready for us to have them. We thought we were ready, and every time we said yes to a placement and the answer was no, like CPS called back, I'm sorry, they went to a home in Woodville or Longview or wherever, we started getting discouraged. Like maybe we weren't supposed to be doing this. And then it was a Friday. We saw no pictures. All we saw was a file with ages and that the little boy, the parents had tried to murder him. That was all we knew. At a month old, they had tried to kill him. And so we said yes. And we're like, it was one of those, Tammy called me at work. Hey, there's 2 kids. 7 months old, 19 months old. They've been in the system for 6 months. Yes or no? You have any more information? No. I'm like, God, what do you want to do? Okay, let's go. It was about like that. 20 minutes later, she called back. Oh, my God, they're coming Monday. Oh, my God, they're coming Monday. We only had 1 room set up. Like, we only had 1 bed. Babies are expensive. But what the whole point of that story is, God works it all out to His end, to His glory. And He changes your heart in an instant.
We also, for us, started specializing, I guess, in sibling sets. So we fostered and adopted, and then we took 6 or so months, and then God told us He wanted us to foster again. And then we specifically told our agency that we were working with that we really wanted to do sibling sets because Scott's the middle of 5, and I have a younger brother, and it just, became a burden for us to think about siblings being separated, and if homes could keep them together, we wanted to be part of that.
Yeah.
Something that Tosh mentioned, and just how God knows ahead of time. And Brian and I both grew up in Christian homes, and we knew that in our head a lot, but it was hard for our hearts, I think. This has really been a faith journey for us, and really getting down to the nitty-gritty of what do we really believe and how are we really going to live what we believe. And going back to the whole not being safe and not being easy. But that's been a faith journey for us too. I tried to tell God that he was wrong and we didn't need to be foster parents.
Yeah.
We swear we'd never, ever be foster parents. And that was where he wanted us. And we've had a lot of heartache because of it, but looking back on it now, this is where he wanted us.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. I mean, I have changed completely. Scott has changed completely because God has been working on us. It is a huge faith journey. Lots of, do I really trust God? Do I trust God when we moved from adopting 3 and then we were going to adopt again, it was going to be, moving us from a family of 5 to a family of 10. That was huge. I mean, do I walk out there and trust God that you really are going to provide a house for us and a vehicle for us and finances for us? And everything has been a faith walk to say, I trust you. You brought us children. This is your plan. And then so much more internally, things that have changed about us and how we realized that we had a lot of issues that we needed to work through, and challenges bring that out. And so it's a huge faith journey. It really is.
Yeah. Speaking of that, this question feeds right into that. The question asks if it's biblical, okay? And so we can dance around that somewhat, but is it biblical to skip having children? What do you say to somebody, if your significant other, there's a couple questions in here like this. What do you say to your significant other if they don't want kids? How do you handle that?
Pre-conversation?
Like pre-marriage, right? Like
right.
This is before we said I do?
Some are yes and no.
Okay, so pre-marriage, it's a conversation. You need to have the talk and
Amen.
Be playing in the same field, right? You don't have to agree on the number of kids specifically before, and maybe you want to. If you line up perfectly, that's great. If you don't, some things can be worked around. I mean, there's fluctuation amongst all amounts of children and how many and when and how and all those things, right? Post-marriage, I don't know.
Well,
we worked this out beforehand because we both wanted families. And so knowing that, obviously, amongst other things, we were compatible as a couple.
Well, I would definitely say after marriage, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that, number one, first and foremost, that you're accountable to God. And then secondly, you're accountable to your spouse. So you're not accountable to your unborn children or the children that you think that you deserve to have or that you should have. And so I think first and foremost is that if you have a desire that your spouse doesn't have, that's something that you need to go to God for first. Because if it becomes a battle between you and your spouse, you both will lose every single time. Because that child that you want to have is a temporary assignment that God has given you, but your spouse is the permanent assignment that God has given you for the rest of your life. And so after my children have come and gone, my wife and I will still be together. And so whatever it is that she wants is ultimately going to be most important to me, that we go together to God to say, Lord, we disagree on this subject. Because if you're disagreeing about having children, you probably got a long list of things if you're married and you're disagreeing about. And so that's just the beauty of life and relationship. And if you're dating, you're already finding that out. We disagree about stuff. If you're engaged, hello, Moors, has anything changed after you've been married? Or do we still disagree, right? It's just life, right? It's relationship and life. So I think you go to the Lord and pray. Say, God, I have a desire. My spouse doesn't agree. Lord, help work this out in me. And don't make it a their problem thing. Make it an us thing that we need to work through. And then let God do the healing of hearts and the matching up of minds to say, okay, wow, God changed my mind. and then God changed their mind, or God changed us, and then we have kids or we don't, or whatever.
And I think that can apply to anything in marriage, not just kids.
Yeah.
You know, you might have something you feel God's telling you. I thought that we were supposed to be foster parents or adoptive parents for a long time before I told Brian, and you know, I didn't know how he was going to react. But I think that can apply to things other than having kids, and just your marriage is important, and you don't want a topic to you know, to come between you in your marriage, and praying to God that, yeah, where's my heart? God, help me see what you want me to do, and for God to work in both of us.
Slight deviation, a question that dovetails into that. We have a couple of these. Is it wrong that I don't feel called to adopt in any form or fashion?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Everyone has desires that have been put in them since the day they were born. I believe that through God. If we all were designed to do the exact same thing, we would be running circles and be not productive as a church. Not as Praise Church, as the church, right? There's no way we can all adopt. There's not enough kids. However, as a church, I think we're underserving that area heavily. So no, if you don't have a desire to adopt right now, I didn't until I was 33. I'm 35 right now. Well, no, I take that back. I didn't until I was 34. I'm 35 right now. I held a veto card in my left hand pretty tight for the first year of this foster stuff, right? Or getting into it. So no, there's no negative because you don't feel that you should be all things to all people immediately. We should strive for it, to be everything we can be for Christ, but it's not the same for each person. So no guilt in that.
And I think also something that I've come to learn through foster care is there is very little support for foster parents. Right. And so, like my 4 kids that are biological kids, when we had kids, we had meals. We had people bring us gifts. We had people bring us food and food and food. So far in our journey in foster care, no one has offered to do that for us.
Not a baby shower, not nothing.
Except our parents, like bring a meal like once.
Hey, Brian, a kid will be here in 2 hours. Can you go pull some stuff out of storage? We need him to be able to sleep somewhere.
Right, like
tonight.
we
like
are doing
that's
more
the baby
work.
coming home, right?
Yeah, we're doing more work than we did with our biological kids and getting less support. So it's not always about everyone needs to be a foster parent, but how can you help support the people in your church? Where are your talents? Maybe you can go mow their grass because they've been up all night. And
271 Pine Mountain. No, I'm sorry.
But Brian, you know, when we had our 4 kids, Brian had time off work. Not with, you know, you have 2 hours to prepare for a 3-week-old, or you have a child come in from Houston with a significant injury that's going to be here in an hour. Brian's going to work, and I'm like, you know, and so just a support system within the church. I guess, you know, that's something that I would say is everybody can do something. What can you offer? Where can you step outside of what you think was easy, what you think was, maybe this isn't very important, and it is important. Even, like I said, those meals and there are some foster parents who do get that support. They do get baby showers and they do get meals and so on and so forth. But for us, that never happened. We survived. We're fine. But those are ways that the church can support and ways that you can use what God has given you to support other people.
I'll say some of the ways that I would say for sure your age could help. We have some college students who went and got their CPR certification so that they could be our babysitters because that's a requirement for CPS. And that was huge. I mean, they were my go-to people. I knew that I could count on them to be a babysitter. And that was it was great for them. They got to step into our world and see and love on kids too. But I would say for sure that would be a huge support that you could offer foster parents. Is something easy, but it's a requirement for CPS is that you have to have your CPR certification and you have to go through some basic training, but it was huge help.
Also, no, it is not wrong to not want to adopt or to not want to do foster care. It is wrong to not care about orphans. That's a biblical mandate that we all have. And so as stated, to get in the game somehow is what is important. And so I would think that would be just my main effort or goal, is to say there is something for all of us to do. And the reality is to not have a heart for adoption is a tricky thing to say, because the Israelites, Jewish people, are God's people. Okay? And if you are not an Israelite, or if you're not a Jewish person, and you are a follower of Christ, the Bible says, in the book of Ephesians, I believe, Paul uses a language that we have been adopted into the family of God. So God's heart is for adoption. It just is. I have been adopted as a son of God. You have been adopted as a daughter or a son of God. So the heart of adoption screams throughout Scripture from verse 1 to the last verse. And so what's important for us to understand is that it is a part of Christianity, a part of faith, to love adoption or to love caring for orphans, right? But it doesn't mean that I have to be an adoptive parent or I'm a bad Christian, or I have to foster or I'm a bad Christian. But it does mean that I've got to see that there are 300,000 children in the United States of America that are in the foster care system, or there are 100,000 children waiting to be adopted by a family right now, tonight, in the United States of America. 400,000 children are separated or orphaned. They are separated from their families. And they are looking for somebody to call a parent, even if it's a temporary thing. So for us to say, I don't know if I should be a foster parent or an adoptive parent, I would say before we shut that off or turn that down, I would say I would go to God and say, God, can you teach me how to care about orphans? Can you show me what it means to love others? Because I think we make Christianity way too hard. You see a need, you meet a need. I don't know if God's called me. Freaking yes, he has. Okay? Yeah. There is too much Scripture that says, care about other people. Love kids. Right? You don't have to ask if God's called you to. I'm just waiting for a special sign. Read the Bible. Okay? It's there. Everywhere it's there. You just have to find your lane. You just got to find your lane, right? It's not should I, it's how can I.
What am I most capable of making an impact in? Right? And what can you do? Not what, should or am I called? Do I feel?
On that, in that same motif, if I could just, there are 600 Nextgeners at Praise Church. 600. Birth to 18. Or birth to 25. Right? 600. Statistically, 33% of all people under the age of 25 were raised without a father in the home. You do the math. There's hundreds of kids in this church looking for somebody to sow into their life. You don't have to take them home. You don't have to raise them. You don't have to pay for college. But the spirit of adoption says, you're without a dad. I will be a father to the fatherless. I will clothe the naked. I will feed the hungry. Let me take you under my wing because my dad did it for me. Maybe he didn't. Somebody did. Jimmy has. Pastor Reg has. Somebody's done it for you. It's your turn to look at the next gen. This is Next Gen to Next Gen series. Why are we doing this? So you can look at a 16-year-old next week and go, hey, I see you going down that road. Come hang out at Starbucks with me. Let's talk about this. Right? You don't have to take them home. I would love it. I'd love it if one day you look back and go, you know what? I changed my mind about family because of this discussion. But if that never happens, so be it. But if you can look at a 12-year-old next week upstairs on a Sunday morning who's alone in the corner, scared to death because they don't know anybody, and you can show them the love of Christ, mission accomplished. Spirit of adoption in action at work. Okay? You don't have to feed them. You don't. Speaking of food, we have lots of questions about how the process works. Is it expensive? Does it cost money? Adoption, foster care, 2 minutes on the financial process, the paperwork process? How do people get involved?
So the state, if you're going through foster care, the state will provide you with money to help meet those needs for those children. It just comes late. So we would get children who would come with garbage bags of stuff that they had been collected from their house and as they were being removed, because this is real life, right? They're being removed from something. So they come with garbage bags, they have nothing, and if what they do have is filthy. So we would load up and go to Walmart the next day and just get socks and underwear and pajamas and a couple outfits, and then we would round our troops and say, hey, I need size 5 clothes or whatever, and so yes, they do meet basic needs. The state does provide some money.
It's a per day, per diem is what we
It is. It's a per day
Doesn't
kind
cover
of.
everything.
Yes, flat rate. And then for us, we have still been able to get some of that money post-adoption. We still get some money because our children were sibling sets, and that's considered hard to place. So we still receive some money from the state to help with meet our needs.
And also there is a per diem, a day wage or rate they pay for the child. Secondly, they do pay for the formula and food early on.
A child is eligible for WIC if they're under a certain age, so that pays for part of their formula, milk kind of stuff. Not necessarily all of it, but it covers a good bit of it when they're under 3.
And then twice a year you get a voucher for clothing. We just go to JCPenney's. That's how we stretch it the furthest, right? JCPenney's on sale, baby. Yep. If Kohl's was on there, I'd be there too, but Kohl's doesn't do that.
All right. As our time's winding down, I'd like to take the last few minutes and just let each of you give a final thought, parting shot, whatever formula that comes out. We'll start to my right.
Whatever your preconceived notions of family are, you may end up with it, you may not. Whatever it is, be willing to do what you are capable of and push yourself to do the things you don't think you are capable of. Whether that is teaching your children to be a better person than you are, teaching your children to love Christ earlier than you did, the basics of being a parent. And then push yourself past that. Don't believe your children that you have biologically, or children you may not have biologically, is all you're going to do. Don't wait to be married to start practicing. Don't wait to be engaged. Don't wait to have a girlfriend to start practicing. Boyfriend, for the least. Work on it now. Somebody needs to be loved that's younger than you, that's new to Christ, that doesn't know Christ. Whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, Boys Haven's down the road, whether it's a kid upstairs, whether it's your little brother at the house. Someone needs Christ through you. Start working on those family skills now.
I guess, what I said before, just we can choose in life to be easy, but that's not what Jesus did. And I need to make a conscious decision to do the hard and difficult things because that's what Jesus did for us. And that's a big thing that I've learned through this journey, not just foster care, but as a parent, in marriage, in our marriage, choosing to work through things. It's hard sometimes, but choosing the hard things instead of doing things the easy way. And looking past what I can see with my human eyes and asking God, break my heart. Show me what is in my life right now that I can do so that I can show others the love of Jesus.
Being married is way harder than you think. Having kids is even harder than being married. Living a life where you don't pour into somebody is even harder than that. You don't know what you're missing until you start pouring yourself out. You just don't know. I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have 5 dads. 5. I have my own physical, earthly birth father who still sees me every Sunday morning walking through the cafe, stops me, hugs me, and kisses me in front of the entire church. And it's wonderful. And he loves my kids, and he gave them his last name, and it's awesome. But I have 4 other men, my best friends' fathers, who were there every step of the way, who gave of themselves for a punk, snot-nosed kid who didn't know what he was doing and didn't let me go the wrong way. And when I wasn't at my dad's house, I was at their house. And they had the courage and the guts to say, son, that road goes the wrong way. They didn't have to. They just did. And they were kind, and they were loving, and they were gentle. And they knew how to show grace, and they knew how to show mercy, and they knew how to hug, and they knew how to love, and they knew how to pour themselves out without expecting anything in return. And today I call them Dad. And I love them deeply. And my kids call all of them Papa. They don't have to be yours for you to love them like a mother and a father. They don't even have to be young. They just have to need somebody. Freely you have been given. Freely give.
I'll say, first of all, there's so much that I could say. I think we could sit up here for hours and hours because it's something we're so passionate about. And so we're definitely going to hang out afterwards. But if you have questions or you still want some more information, please look me up on Facebook or look us up on Facebook and find a way to connect with us, because this is something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be continued to be talked about. I want family to look different than what I thought family should look like. For the sake of children who need families, I want it to be normal for families to be foster families and to be adopted families. I want it to be the majority of families in the church who are foster families and who are adopted families. And if I could leave the last few words with you, that's what I would say, is that I want that to be what the church is known for. I want us to be orphan churches, to be filled with children who are in need.
So, I was reading a book the other day, finished it. Very proud of that. I know some of you guys know what I mean. It's like, I finished a book. Yes. Yes, and it was great. So, anyway, a statistic that they quoted in there was very alarming to me. It said that 4 out of every 10 women in the United States of America have had an abortion. So chances are there are more than one person in this room who have had an abortion. So if that's you, I want you to know God doesn't hate you. He loves you. He forgives you. Nobody's mad at you. We hurt because I can't imagine being in a position where you had to make a choice like that, where somebody pushed you to the edge and you didn't have an answer, didn't have a response. Nobody hates you, okay? As a church, we hate abortion. Absolutely. It's sin, it's ugly, and it's murder. But here's the reality. It's really hard to hate abortion if you don't love adoption. It's really hard to hate abortion if you don't love foster care. It's really hard to say, I can't stand people who kill babies, if you don't stand up and say, I'm going to stand in the gap for all the people who didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so for us as a church, it's not any longer, should I do something? It's, how can I get in the game? All right? I'm a basketball player. So my goal, every time I'm really good, even though I'm 5'8" and white. So my goal is always is how can I help my team win? So it's not always scoring, because that's what we always think of. Sometimes it's just dribbling the ball up the court and making the pass, or you know, calling a timeout, or whatever it is, however you can help. And so for me, it's if we're a team as a church, is what role can I play on the team to care for orphans? And when we think about a number like 400,000 kids, I can't help that many kids. You're right. But you can help one. And if you could change the life of one kid, wow. Because we got 7 kids in our lives that are ours now that will never be my blood. They are my children. Now, I'm told they look like me. I'm told, sadly, they act like me. They are mine. And they don't have to wonder if anybody cares about them. They don't have to wonder if they're going to have food the next day. They don't have to wonder if they're going to have new shoes for school. Even if it's not the ones that they want, they're going to get new ones, right? They don't have to wonder about that kind of stuff, because we've answered the question for them. Because God told us to, and we did it. God didn't tell me to in some special revelation. He told me through in the Bible, black and white, so some idiot like me doesn't miss it. So I would encourage you. It's not a guilt trip. It's not a have to. It's a get to. I get to care for kids in need. I get to. Because I'm going to be the one that's changed forever. Yeah. As much as I do for that kid, I get changed. And I'm more like Jesus today because I said yes so many years ago. And I would encourage you, the things that we're scared about sometimes are the things that are going to be the most rewarding in life. So if we're scared, say yes and go for the ride, and it will be an amazing journey, I guarantee you. And so we will be the generation. Are we part of their generation? Are y'all millennials? Whatever. We will be the generation that answers the call in the church. We will be. I guarantee you we will be. We will be the people that says, that's a need, we're going to meet it. And you're going to be a part of that. And I'm going to get to be a small part of that. We're going to turn the world upside down. We are. I believe that.